In a jaw-dropping live broadcast, a CBC News reporter just grilled Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on live TV. And let me tell you guys, it was intense. If you thought you knew about the issues that Canada is facing, this interview is going to leave you shocked.
Or did anything on that?
A lot of people will look at those last two answers and suggest that you are implying there's something to be suspicious about with the New Democrats, right?
So the interview kicked off with the reporter bluntly stating that life has become unaffordable for many Canadians. And honestly, who's gonna argue with that? Prices are skyrocketing and people are struggling. But when Trudeau tried to tackle this, it was clear that he was stumbling. Watching him struggle to give satisfactory answers was like watching a boxer get pummeled round after round. The reporter captured the frustration of the entire nation with those blunt questions. Next, the reporter jumped into the hot topic of foreign interference in our political system. And this is no joke. The reporter didn't hold back, questioning Trudeau on the credibility of a nonpartisan report involving various political parties and even some senators.
Say it is a piece that people can look to, but the fact that the foreign interference inquiry announced actually just today that they are going to be looking into the conclusions of the NSI COP report and drawing further suggestions or steps or engaging with it.
Trudeau tried to emphasize the importance of an independent inquiry led by a respected judge, but his answers were so vague it felt more like he was deflecting responsibility than actually addressing the issue head on. The tension kept rising as the reporter demanded specifics. Canadians want clear answers, not political jargon. But Trudeau, he just kept dodging the questions, and it made him look like he was hiding something.
Well, I think everyone understands that when you talk about issues of national security, disclosing classified information puts the people who collected that information at risk, puts a knowledge of how we protect Canadians.
Honestly, it was incredibly frustrating to watch. The reporter was relentless, and Trudeau's evasive answers only fueled more suspicion. Then the reporter compared his answers to those of other leaders, like Jagmeet Singh of the NDP, who confidently stated there was no one in his caucus to worry about. Trudeau's cautious approach just didn't hold up under pressure.
For committee that would consider the impacts on Canadian businesses?
What I think, so the taxation question isn't just a matter of revenue, it's also a matter of competition. So Canada has lost out because web giants effectively operate without any taxation, without any restrictions, and it's really been an incentive. It's been a subsidy of Facebook, Google, and Netflix. Effectively, Canada has subsidized these companies because they don't have.
Singh's confidence made Trudeau look even weaker and even more untrustworthy. Now, Trudeau did try to use an example of transparency, recalling when he declared India's involvement in the killing of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil. But it felt like he was just cherry-picking moments that suited his narrative.
I hadn't known that Jagmeet said that. I would be wary of any party leader drawing any sort of conclusion like that.
Including Mr. Singh?
I would be wary of any party leader drawing any conclusion like that. There is a range of issues around foreign interference that our security agencies, that our various institutions are engaged in.
Sure, that was a bold move, but one instance of transparency doesn't cover up the current lack of clear answers with what's going on. To the reporter's credit, they were not backing down, demanding specifics about how compromised Parliament might actually be. Trudeau's cautious responses just weren't cutting it. Canadians deserve clarity, especially on issues this serious. His reluctance only made things even worse. Political analysts and commentators were also quick to react. They were dissecting every moment, and the consensus? His performance was weak and unconvincing.
All due respect, these are some of the same things that Justin Trudeau said in 2015 when he was fighting against Stephen Harper. So why should communities believe you if, as you say, Justin Trudeau let them down? How are you not going to let them down? Besides saying political will, because everybody will say, hey, I'm going to get it done. But once they get into power, they realize it's tough to govern.
One, I'm not Justin Trudeau. I'm not like him.
Opposition leaders like Singh and Pierre don't waste time capitalizing on Trudeau's faltering performance. Singh took a jab at Trudeau's evasiveness, and Poilievre accused him of hiding the truth from Canadians.
Here we have 150,000 people on strike, the biggest federal strike in Canadian history. Canadians can't get their services. Meanwhile, their housing costs have doubled and crime is ravaging through our streets. And what is he going to do today? Well, start spreading the news. He's leaving today. He wants to be a part of it. New York, New York. Mr. Speaker.
And the honourable member says singing is not allowed. Whether it's good or bad, it's not allowed.
The Prime Minister's lackluster responses gave his rivals all the ammunition they needed. Then the reporter tackled Trudeau's economic policies, specifically the new capital gains tax. The Prime Minister argued that it's necessary to address the affordability crisis, but the reporter pointed out how it might hurt the tech sector. Trudeau claimed that Canada could still attract tech companies, but his policies could actually drive them away. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion. The reporter didn't let up, questioning how sustainable his spending really is. With constant spending and taxing, his financial plans could lead Canada into a financial mess. And his responses were just more of the same, vague and unconvincing.
The opportunities for young people to actually get back on track in terms of owning a home, there's lots to do on top of the exciting things around AI and quantum and technology that Canada can lead on and around the world.
But despite that optimistic picture, I mean, the country is still angry. You can see it in the mood. And increasingly, Prime Minister, a lot of them are mad at you, right? I know you say you want to beat Pierre Poilievre. You keep coming back to that. But what if...
Speculations about his political future are swirling. Analysts believe that this interview could be a turning point, weakening his support base as voters question his transparency and trustworthiness. But let's not forget, Trudeau has faced criticism before and managed to weather the storm. Yet, this time it feels different. The stakes are higher and the dissatisfaction among Canadians is palpable.
The best thing to do is take that strong economy and put it in service of Canadians who need support.
Despite the measures you've just outlined there that you've done to make life more affordable, the cost of many, many things have gone up. And while the inflation crisis may be over, the cost of living crisis is still there. Things are baked in, housing, rent is still too expensive. This has affected the political mood of the country, right? And your party, as the governing party, has suffered from it.
But even when you say...
People are feeling the pinch in their pockets, and they're seeing through the political smoke and mirrors. They're tired of vague promises and want real solutions. And this interview might have just pushed Trudeau to a breaking point. However, his team went into damage control mode immediately. They released statements trying to clarify his positions and emphasize his commitment to transparency and accountability. But the damage was already done. The interview had left a lasting impression, and no amount of spin could change that.
Baked in. The measures we are delivering are actually ways that are taking pressure off of families' balance sheets.
But groceries are still high. You know, things are still
but we're
up,
delivering
right?
a national food program that's going to save $800 a year to lower-income families because we're delivering for 400,000 more kids across the country. So there is no one silver bullet. The cost of living is up all around the world. We were all talking about that at the G7.
Political pundits and talk show hosts dissected the interview for days. Some called it a masterclass in journalism, praising the reporter for holding Trudeau's feet to the fire. Others were more sympathetic to Trudeau, suggesting that no politician could have handled such an aggressive line of questioning flawlessly. But the consensus was clear. Trudeau had faltered when it mattered the most. And as the dust settled, the focus shifted to the broader implications of the interview. What does this mean for Trudeau's leadership? Can he regain the trust of the Canadian people? And how will this impact the upcoming election?
The tax issue that your government has been pushing, the change in the capital gains inclusion rate, and you've argued that it will really only affect the truly wealthy. I think it's fair to say that one sector, though, that will be particularly affected by this is the tech sector because of the way they compensate their staff and build their companies. You said you want Canada to be a tech hub, particularly in artificial intelligence. given the way tech companies function in their employees, does this not work against your economic goals there?
No, it doesn't, because at the same
Only time will tell, but one thing's for sure. This interview has changed the political landscape in Canada. It's highlighted the growing discontent among Canadians and the urgent need for genuine leadership. In the aftermath, opposition parties ramped up their campaigns, using clips from the interview to bolster their arguments against Trudeau. They painted him as a leader out of touch with reality, unable to provide clear answers or effective solutions.
Is a former NDP strategist. Vandana, hello everybody. Vandana, let's start with you. The Prime Minister's not meeting with the full caucus, but he has been doing smaller, let's call them breakout sessions. Ashley Burke talked to Tony Van Buynen, says he met with a small number of MPs in the York area of Toronto, and they say it's a more productive thing. It sounds like he's staying, and is this the right approach in your view, as opposed to the big get everyone together?
Well, absolutely, and I did reflect about this quite a bit.
The Prime Minister, on the other hand, tried to pivot the conversation. He doubled down on his policies, arguing that his approach was the only viable path forward. He held rallies and town halls, trying to reconnect with voters and address their concerns directly. But the shadow of the interview loomed large. Every event, every speech was scrutinized through the lens of that fateful day on live TV. And the question on everyone's mind was the same. Could Trudeau bounce back? Or was this the beginning of the end of his political career?
Election, but after speaking to him, feel really positive and actually I'm going to write this note for him, I'm going to share these ideas, but felt like there was a really good reception there. So I actually think what he's doing is right. And that way people can actually have proper one-on-one or few-on-one time with him, and it allows them to really hash out the conversation.
So Jordan, the people who have met with the Prime Minister seem to be okay with it. Others who wanted the big meeting they've expressed some frustration that this is centrally controlled and keeps everybody divided.
The media continued to keep the story alive with follow-up reports and analysis. Experts weighed in, offering insights into his strategy and the challenges that he faced. And as the election drew nearer, the stakes only grew higher. For many Canadians, the interview became a symbol of their frustrations. It encapsulated their grievances and their desire for change. And as they headed to the polls, it was clear that this moment would be a defining factor in their decision.
Its inclusion rate, and you've argued that it will really only affect the truly wealthy. I think it's fair to say that one sector, though, that will be particularly affected by this is the tech sector, because of the way they compensate their staff and build their companies. You said you want Canada to be a tech hub, particularly in artificial intelligence. Given the way tech companies function in their employees, does this not work against your economic goals there?
No, it doesn't, because at the same time we're creating more incentives.
Trudeau's opponents seized the opportunity, framing the election as a referendum on his leadership. They promised to bring fresh ideas and new energy to the table, vowing to address the issues that he had seemingly failed to tackle. As the campaign trail heated up, the pressure on Trudeau intensified. Every move, every statement was scrutinized, and despite his efforts to regain footing, the impact of that interview still lingered.
More aggressive spending path on things. What do you do? What are your options at this point in the summer?
Well, the options that they've already done several times. You can think about a cabinet shuffle. You can think about, as was mentioned, firing your finance minister. That certainly makes a big splash. Bring somebody in from the outside, bring them into cabinet instead of having an elected MP sit in cabinet. I mean, those are kind of variations on a theme of mixing up the people around.
Supporters of Trudeau argue that his performance was a testament to the complexity of governing in a diverse and large country like Canada. They believe that his cautious approach reflects a responsible and thoughtful leader who prefers careful consideration over impulsive decisions. His team highlighted his past achievements, such as the legalization of cannabis, the renegotiations of NAFTA, and significant strides in climate policy.
Making life more affordable for Canadians. We're talking today about making life more affordable for our brilliant Olympian athletes, but we also need to make life more affordable for families with kids, with things like early learning and childcare. We need to make life more affordable by delivering dental care.
His defenders also pointed out that Trudeau has managed to steer the country through unprecedented challenges, including the global pandemic, and that his focus on social policies has benefited millions of Canadians. They argue that his emphasis on building a more inclusive society and addressing systemic inequalities is precisely what the country needs.
Of course. But what I will say is there was definitely a clear message from the voters of Toronto, St. Paul's. And I think it's really important for our government to hear that message and to act on that message. And that message was, things are hard. Life is hard.